So the question was asked, what do we do about water here on the homestead? First, we hauled water in this tank. So we hauled water in that little small tank, it's 350 gallons, and would fill this big water tank to water the garden. This large garden, it's 100 by 100 square feet, was our first project here on the homestead. We had this garden here a whole year before we moved the trailer house, and so watering was an issue. So I hauled water in the little 350 gallon tank and would fill this stock tank, and would run, there's a bib on the end of it. I put a hose on it, and we basically gravity feed to water the garden. Then we got the trailer house moved on to the property a little over a year after we started working here, and we would, while we were working on it, and we would get buckets of water to flush toilets from this tank, and that's what we did for water to begin with. Another water system we had was catching water. Once we got the trailer moved in, we would catch water, or we do catch water, and then we move it out of these buckets into, I have a tank down here by the little garden to feed it water, and to water it. I have a tank down there, and we siphon water out of these into that tank or carry it. And then another thing we have to help with our water is a galvanized tub, and I fill it either out of the rainwater that we catch, or we haul water sometimes in the 350 gallon tank. So back to how we have our water system set up. So inside this shed that my father-in-law built is a 550 gallon holding tank. So right after we moved the trailer house in, someone gave us this big tank, and we hauled water in the 350 gallon tank and would siphon water into this tank, and then we have an RV pump that draws out of the bottom of this tank and would pressure up the lines in the house. And it runs on the back porch switch. You hear it kicking on now. Someone's using water in the house. And there's a switch on the back porch for the light, and you just turn the light on and the pump kicks on and pulls water out of the bottom. So we hauled water for several months, and eventually was able to get the water line in, and we were able to hook onto a water line from a city that is near us, and their line is across the highway from us. Underneath the house here is that little RV pump. But anyway, basically, so we bored the line and under the highway, and put in a meter. The other city did, and then we had some friends of ours that my husband works with. They brought their machinery out, and they dug line and hooked us up to the water line from that city line. And there's an issue with that. We don't have water all the time from that line. So I showed you the water tanks and the drip system, or catch systems for rainwater that we use. And so is there anything you want to say, Gary, about the hooking up to the city line? And I haven't told them that we don't have water all the time yet. I haven't explained that.
We just, we're pretty blessed to be able to hook onto that city line. It is the tower line from the lake to a local town, and we only have water when the tower calls for water and kicks the pumps on?
From the water treatment plant, yeah. So we do have treated water, so it is potable. We can drink it. To whereas before, when we were hauling water, we didn't drink that water when we were filling the big tank and running our RV pumps off of that. We would haul drinking water. So the system worked really well for the system that we already had set up. Gary's a great engineer of those kind of things, and he kicked it around with several other guys, and they just kind of come up with that plan and being the best fit for us. So there is a well here. It's very shallow, and basically it just catches rainwater. So we don't have water in it very often or for very long when there is water there. So right now we don't even access that water at all. We hauled water to drink for a long time while we were hauling water to fill our holding tank and run the house. And then whenever we were able to hook onto the city line and get all that going, Gary put in a float valve in the water tank. So when we use water, the valve opens, and so then whenever there's water in the line from the city, it'll fill that tank, and as the float comes up, it'll shut off that valve, and the water will stop when that tank is full. So that works really well for the city line that doesn't have water where we're at. It's not a pressurized line, so where we're at in the line, there's not water all the time. Water comes through that line 3, maybe 4 times in a 24-hour period, and at different volumes. Mm-hmm. And so we can set up sprinkler systems for the garden, and basically we just leave the sprinklers on. That's one way we use water here. Another way is we just kind of know about times that the water's going to be on in that line, and we'll run and fill. If it's really hot and we've not had a lot of rain, we'll run and fill the tanks and the holding tanks that we have, the stock tanks, that's what I want to say. The stock tanks and the little round rain gutter tank that I have down at the little garden that we caught water at our house we rented before. It had been on another system that we tried to use some rainwater as much as we could. Anything else?
I don't know.
Okay.
Our first water system here was a 5-gallon bucket.
Yes, I kind of told them about that, that we would fill the big stock tank and use the 5-gallon buckets of water to flush the toilets and stuff, and then we hauled our drinking water in a different and we washed dishes, and that jug is put away, but it was a nice clean jug that we had, that is its purpose is for hauling drinking water, and that's what it was made for. So you need to check out, if this video is for you guys, you need to check out, I guess, the laws and regulations where you live to see if some of these systems work. There's a whole lot more on the other end of this, like where, I can cut all this out, that's good though. But yeah, so just check out, make sure that you're following the codes of your county and state for your water.
I would say that before you ever buy a piece of property, when you're looking at a piece of property, the first things you check into is access from the road, is water availability, what you're going to have to do to have water, and electricity. Those are the 3 things you check out. And then there's other things too, but those are the very first things you check out when you're looking into property. And before we ever agreed to this property, we knew what the water line from the pump system to the tower for the other town, we knew what it was going to take. We knew we had permission to get a meter from them, and we knew that I would have to come up with some kind of system to have our own water volume and then pump our own water pressure. And we knew exactly what it was going to take, or exactly what we were looking at before we ever bought this property. And so that's something you always should check out. And if you know, there's always ways around things, but know what you're getting into when you get into it.
Like, we had to save up the money to be able to pay and wait on the boring company to bore under the highway, and wait for the money to run the lines. You know, the line cost us money, even though the company Gary works with was able to do a lot of the digging and everything for us, and those guys were great. But we still had expenses. You know, the water line is expensive, the connections, you know, fuel for the machinery, and the boring company was very reasonable, and as well as the company Gary works with. So those guys were super good. They helped us tremendously, as well as other neighbors. So networking is a huge deal. Be a neighbor. Go help someone, and without expecting something in return. Just be a good neighbor. And we have lots of good neighbors, and we try to be a good neighbor. So thank you for watching this video on the history of our water system and the stages of providing water and having water on the homestead. So thanks for watching, and please subscribe, and as always, hide and watch.